Morning, everyone. So we are now term 6, week 2. And I have to say, you guys have been a bit quieter than normal this week. Not as many comments, although there's still a lot of you obviously clicking done, but then maybe you're not even watching the video, you're just going, yeah, all right, miss, we've seen your face a lot. So I'm sorry if I am boring you. But I have to say, I kind of feel you with the not commenting as much this week. It feels like there's a lot of really big stuff going on at the moment, like there's a sea change happening, which is amazing and absolutely necessary. Obviously, we've got the protests in the US, in the UK, and also around the world after the death of George Floyd. So I hope you guys are watching the news, and it's big. And I think, you guys are 11, 12 years old. You're old enough to read things for yourself about this and decide for yourself what you think needs to happen next, because this is, I think, a definite turning point in what's going on at the moment. So I hope you're keeping on top of what's going on. Don't just read things by people who are just like you. Read lots of different things. Maybe listen to some podcasts and things if you're interested. So this week, I've been doing that. I've downloaded a few books and I've been listening to some podcasts and just trying to educate myself, because I think that's one of the things that you have to grow and develop as a person throughout your whole life. It's a really good opportunity at the minute to do that. So in terms of if you're interested in the issue of race in the USA, I listened to a podcast about a woman called Ida B. Wells. So it's IDA is her first name. It's worth Googling her. She's a very interesting character and I've never heard of her before. She was born in 1862, so we are talking 100 years before Martin Luther King. And she actually was one of the founders of the NAACP, which is a group that still exists. It stands for the National Association for the Advancement of Coloured People. So even though we don't use the term coloured people anymore, we would say people of colour. It's called the NAACP and it's her legacy. And she was an absolute badass. Something I didn't know, she didn't just work to try and move forward black rights. She actually was just generally interested in civil rights, human rights, and as a woman particularly, and a black woman, she had lots of battles that she was trying to fight. And one fact that I found quite interesting in the podcast was that she was part of the suffrage movement in the early part of the 20th century to get votes for women. And when her particular suffrage group were marching on Congress, the white women told her she wasn't allowed to march with them. So she said, oh, okay. And then she went and stood in the crowds and waited till her suffrage group went past, and then she just slipped in and joined them. And she's like, here I am. You can't get rid of me that easily. So even people trying to fight for their rights, the white suffrage, were not allowing the black suffragettes to join them, which it just blew my mind. Anyway, this woman's ace. So if you want to learn about her, she had a lot of influence on, for about 50 years really, on trying to advance black rights in the States, even before you get to the middle of the 20th century. I also learnt about a woman called Marsha P. Johnson, because this month, June, is actually the LGBT Pride Month in the United States to commemorate the Stonewall riots. Often, I'm not sure whether Stonewall Uprising is the term that would be a better one to use. It's interchangeable on the internet with riots and uprising. Anyway, basically there was this bar called Stonewall that was raided by the police, and it happened over a whole week of uprising, protests at the end of June 1969. And Marsha P. Johnson was a gay liberation activist and a really prominent figure in the Stonewall Uprising, and I just found her story really interesting as well. Again, I know bits of things, but maybe not all of the things. I still don't. But that was quite interesting to look into that. So if either of those interest you, it's worth having a little Google this week and having a look. What I will say is, since we've all been really quiet, and I know there's some big stuff going on, I still want to hear about the little things. Please send me pictures of your animals. Tell me the things you've been getting up to. So, people who have got back to me this week, still lots of you, I have to say, even though it's dropped a little bit from last week. So, this one really cracked me up. So, I believe that you've had an art task to try and recreate famous paintings. Ella McDonald tried to recreate the girl with the pearl earring, but she used her dog, and the dog wasn't very happy about it. However, I think that's hilarious. I can just imagine the scene trying to get the photograph of her dog dressed up with the... Because doesn't the girl have a thing on her head? And she's kind of turned to the camera. No idea how you get a dog to do that. Anyway, that made me laugh. I've got a few birthdays. So Amelie Bishop and Amber Horton both had birthdays on the 4th, which was last Thursday. So happy birthday to you guys. I got a bit of clarity because I mentioned Jasmine Burford having like millions of dogs, and I wasn't sure if I just hadn't read her thing properly. Turns out she has 12 dogs, so I was reading that one right. She has Huskies, German Shepherds, and a Labradoodle, so I cannot imagine what her house is like. It must be completely bonkers. Really nice to see some of you in school. I was in school quite a lot last week. Lloyd's afro is in fact amazing. I have seen it in the flesh now. And I saw Holly Ann, I saw Akia, and I'm in on Wednesday, so I'm hoping I might see a few more of you in there as well. I think Reese, you said you might be there on Wednesday. I have missed lots of birthdays, which I hadn't really thought about this. So if you do have a birthday coming up, let me know and I'll give you a little shout out. I feel like a really bad 1980s DJ, but it's nice to know that you're all celebrating, even though you can't really go that far. So Ella May had a birthday and she got a keyboard and she's learning to play that, because I think I mentioned someone last week who had taught themselves or was learning to play the piano, which is very impressive. Last week I think it was Daniel Roebuck who had seen loads and loads of animals, so that's obviously started a bit of a wildlife theme. Tell me the animals that you've seen. But Ian Fernandez told me that he'd found a dead snake on a walk that he went on, so that was pretty impressive. Rufus made a birthday cake for his sister. Alfie Gilchrist has been decorating. Like, you guys are really getting in with the kind of adulting jobs and learning some skills there, which is really impressive. Speaking of which, James Hall, I'm really impressed. You've got a whole market garden going on right now. You've got cucumbers, tomatoes. He sent me a picture of his cabbage. No, it wasn't. It was a picture of his lettuce, which looked amazing, and not like the kind of slightly wilted ones that you see in the supermarket. He's also growing cabbage, cauliflower, and peas. So for those of you who know, I'm vegan, so that's like a whole meal for me for free. I should start doing that really. So well done, James. Very good skills. I think it was Tilly, I think, that I mentioned last week, who baked for her parents to take into work. Quite a lot of you have been doing that, actually. So Emily Hewardine said she's been baking for her parents and their work colleagues as well. And Freya Sharp said that she's also been baking for her mum to take into the hospital for her work friends as well, because she's an NHS worker. Camille has been making sushi. I absolutely love sushi, and she even sent me a little picture of her using the little rolling mat, so that's another very good skill to have. Lucy Pepper, been out walking, keeping an eye on a couple of families of ducks. I have to say I've been doing this as well. She's obviously noticed a little family with chicks, and every time she goes out they're just that little bit bigger and they're following their mum around. So I'm really hoping that they all make it, because obviously nature is cruel. But yeah, Lucy's keeping an eye on these two little families of ducks, which is really cute. Now that we've had a slight easing of restrictions, Daisy Maid is back open again, people. I wonder how many of you have had a Daisy Maid in the last week. Holly Rayner sent me a great photograph of her and her family in the car with their ice creams. Looked yummy. Got a couple of people moving house. So Millie Sedigat and Freya, actually, both moving house. Although Millie said that her neighbours aren't going to miss her, because apparently her German Shepherd and her Neapolitan Mastiff, which that sounds big and scary, if I'm honest. Apparently they like to wake the neighbours up by barking, so I'm really hoping you're not moving to the place that I'm supposed to be moving to. And one of them likes to escape, so that just keeps everybody on their toes. I think the last one that I wanted to mention, this really blew my mind. So Tyler Morris sent me a little message saying that he did a bike ride to Mablethorpe. Now I thought he'd mistyped that, or maybe they drove part of the way and then they just biked around Mablethorpe. No, he sent me a picture of the Strava, and it took them 2 hours and 39, him and his dad, to get there, and then presumably 2 hours and 39, or maybe a bit longer, to get back. And that's blown my mind. That's so far. That is so far. I don't even want to drive to Mablethorpe, it's too far. So I just can't believe the kind of things you guys are getting up to. It's unbelievable. So I don't care how small and how pathetic it is in your mind, just send me a message. If you have not dared send me a little comment that so far, please do, because I really want to know what you're all up to. I am going absolutely stir crazy. Getting into school a little bit last week was really nice, and it was great to see a few of you, but it's just not the same. I hope that you're messaging your tutors every so often to let them know that you're still alive and everything's okay. Again, even if it's just a mundane little comment, they really appreciate that as well. So guys, have a really good week. Try and stay on top of your work again. Remember, keep the timetable where it's 3 hours of work a day and then 2 enrichment activities. Again, if you really like working, you can do some more work as part of your enrichment activities, or you might want to look at the 2 people that I mentioned to see the kind of just ordinary people that somehow managed to advance things in the world and civil rights for all of us. So have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye.